Four-year college degrees, AI just made them optional. The future of education isn't about lectures, it's about AI-driven skills. Let's break down the latest AI dope and how this is the biggest shift in learning history.
So imagine for a second you're like a tech CEO in Silicon Valley, at the forefront of all this AI stuff. You're surrounded by all these brilliant people developing crazy technology. But then, like in the back of your mind, you have this question: how do you prepare the next generation for a world that's like completely reshaped by AI?
It's a big question for sure.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Mark Schaefer tries to answer in his article, How to Reimagine Universities for the AI Era. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah, I read that one.
He makes this pretty bold claim that universities are basically like sandcastles against a rising tide.
You know what strikes me is the urgency in his writing. He's not just saying universities need to adapt a little bit. He's saying they're becoming obsolete.
Whoa. Strong words.
Yeah, he's basically saying that clinging to traditional education is like building those sandcastles on a beach that's eroding away. And the tide in this case is like the unstoppable force of AI. It's washing away the foundations of how we learn and work.
That's a pretty powerful image. Like you said, he doesn't mince words.
No, he doesn't.
It's funny, because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's a professor.
Oh, yeah.
And he was telling me it took him 2 years to get a new class approved on digital marketing.
Wow.
And by the time the class was finally offered, some of the platforms he was teaching about were already outdated.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, that anecdote just perfectly illustrates one of Schaefer's main points, that there's a huge speed mismatch between the academic world and the real world, especially when it comes to AI.
It's moving so fast.
Exactly. Universities are like these giant ships trying to turn on a dime with all their committees and bureaucracy. But meanwhile, the tech landscape is changing at lightning speed. It's like Schaefer says we need to be surfers riding the waves of change, not stuck on a sinking ship. Quick ask. Almost 95% of you watch our videos but still aren't subscribed. Please click subscribe. It really helps us grow. And if you're not loving our content, you can always change your mind. Thanks, and back to it.
Okay, universities are slow. What else does Schaefer have a problem with?
Well, he actually identifies 4 major issues.
4.
Yeah.
Lay them on me.
We've already talked about speed. But there's also the problem of organization. Universities are built around these static career paths. Like you major in accounting and you become an accountant.
Right.
But what happens when AI automates half the things accountants do?
Good question.
Schaefer's argument is that we need to move away from this rigid structure and embrace lifelong learning, where you're constantly adapting and learning new skills.
Okay, so it's not just about learning a specific set of facts. It's about developing the ability to learn and adapt.
Exactly.
But, can universities with their centuries-old traditions really make that kind of shift? It's like turning a cruise ship around.
That's a good question. And that brings us to the third issue, economics.
Money.
Right. Universities are expensive. They have these massive campuses to maintain, tenured professors to pay, this whole infrastructure that's built on a model that's becoming more and more unsustainable.
So he's saying that the current university model is not just outdated, it's overpriced too.
Yes. And he's not just critiquing the institutions themselves, he's challenging the whole system. He asks this really interesting question. He says, who's more likely to innovate? Someone stuck in a fundraising meeting for a new building, or someone working in a co-working space surrounded by entrepreneurs?
Interesting point.
It makes you think about how universities decide to spend their money.
For sure.
Hey, want our free AI dope top AI tools that we use? Chat below. It's our live Google Sheets packed with over 100 killer tools: video, music, photos, AI voices, productivity, script writing, YouTube hacks, captions, the works. Always growing. Live Google Sheet. Always free. AI, dope top AI tools that we use. Download and chat below. Back to the show.
Okay, so we've got slow, rigid, and expensive. What's the 4th issue?
The 4th, and maybe the most controversial, is the role of faculty. Schaefer thinks professors need to change what they do. It's not enough to just dispense information anymore.
Everyone has Google now, right? And these AI tools.
Exactly. Information is everywhere. Schaefer questions whether the tenure system really works. He thinks it can sometimes discourage professors from keeping up with all the latest developments.
So what's the alternative? Are we going to have robot professors?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Schaefer sees a future where AI plays a much bigger role in education, but not necessarily as a replacement for human teachers.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. We got to dig into that more.
So Schaefer's vision, right? It's this university without walls, without semesters. It's more like You subscribe and you keep renewing that subscription your whole life, so you always have access to the latest information and skills.
Eternal relevance, he calls it.
Yeah.
Right? That sounds amazing, but it also sounds kind of like science fiction.
It does have a kind of a futuristic ring to it.
Yeah, is he talking about like uploading our brains to the cloud or something?
Well, no, it's more grounded than that. Think of it as like always being in beta, always learning, always evolving. His point is that the skills that really matter in this AI world, they're not really tied to specific jobs.
It's more about being able to learn and adapt.
Right. It's about solving problems no matter what field you're in. So instead of chasing after, whatever the hottest job title is, you're developing this core set of skills that can be applied anywhere.
So how do you actually achieve that eternal relevance? Is it just like taking a bunch of online courses?
It's more of a mindset shift, really. It's about being curious and always looking for new knowledge and just accepting that learning never really stops. It's a lifelong thing. But Schaefer also has some concrete ideas about how to change the structure of education itself.
Okay, so let's hear it. I mean, we talked about those 4 issues, right? Speed, organization, the economics of it all, and the role of faculty.
Right, and his solutions touch on all of those.
Okay, so he's talking about a subscription-based university. What would that actually look like in real life?
Well, imagine this. Instead of paying, thousands and thousands of dollars every year for 4 years, you pay a monthly fee. And that gives you access to this constantly updated library of learning modules.
Right.
And these modules are not like static textbooks. They're interactive. They're designed to teach very specific skills that employers are actually looking for.
So no more cramming for exams on stuff you'll forget the next day.
Exactly. It's about showing that you can do something, not just that you memorized a bunch of facts. And instead of getting a degree, you earn these accreditations for specific skills.
Like merit badges.
Yeah, kind of like that. Imagine you could show a potential employer, a digital marketing mastery badge or a data analysis pro accreditation. It just means a lot more than a traditional transcript.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's a lot more concrete. But who's creating these modules?
Yeah.
And these accreditations? And how do we know that they're any good and that they're actually up to date?
That's where it gets really futuristic. Schaefer imagines these curriculum committees that are constantly working, almost like newsrooms, They're putting out new modules and updating old ones to reflect all the latest changes in each field.
Okay, so it's like a constant stream of new information.
Exactly. And these committees would have experts on them, practitioners in different fields, and AI would actually play a part in this too.
Okay, so the robot professors are coming.
Not quite robots, but Schaefer thinks AI teaching agents will be a big part of this future. Imagine having an AI tutor that can adapt to how you learn best. It can give you personalized feedback, and it could even simulate, real-world scenarios to test your skills.
It's like having a personal coach 24/7.
That's the idea.
That does sound amazing, but
Yeah.
is it a little scary too? I mean, what about the human element? Do we lose something important when we take teachers out of the picture?
Schaefer doesn't think so. He recognizes that human touch is still essential, especially for younger students. He still sees a role for human mentors and guides, people who can encourage students and support them and help them navigate all this.
So AI is more like a tool to help human teachers do their jobs better.
Exactly. It can free up teachers to focus on the things that humans do best, like inspiring students, motivating them, and getting them to think critically.
That makes sense. So, okay, we've got a subscription model, skills-based, learning these constantly updating modules and AI tutors. What else is part of this brave new university?
One of the coolest parts of Schaefer's vision is the emphasis on community. He sees students forming these learning cohorts, groups of people who are interested in the same things and who support each other and learn together.
So like a study group that never ends.
Right, but it's more than just studying. It's like a lifelong learning community.
Right.
With online forums and virtual events and even in-person meetups so people can connect and collaborate.
That sounds amazing. It's like taking the best parts of university life, the intellectual conversations, the friendships, and the sense of purpose, and just extending it throughout your life.
Exactly, and it's not limited to just your own field. Schaefer thinks it would be great to have multidisciplinary cohorts. So you'd have people from different backgrounds and different industries coming together and sharing their perspectives.
So like you could have a lawyer working with a programmer and a designer to build a new app.
Right. The possibilities are endless.
This is all pretty radical stuff. Do you think it's actually doable? I mean, what about those university rankings that everybody's always talking about? How would those work in this new world?
Well, that's a great question and a really interesting one. Yeah, those rankings are a big part of the problem, actually.
They always felt a little weird to me.
Well, Schaefer thinks they actually incentivize universities to focus on the wrong things.
Instead of like what students actually need.
Right. It's all about prestige and exclusivity and climbing up those rankings instead of, actually providing a good education that prepares students for the real world.
It's like keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. He calls it the tyranny of rankings, and he says it's time to get rid of them.
Okay, so if we get rid of the rankings, how do we know if this new model is working? What are we measuring?
Well, in a skills-based system, it's all about what you can actually do right.
Right, not just a piece of paper that says you went to a certain school.
Exactly. He sees a world where employers can test your skills directly, through assessments and portfolios and those merit badges we talked about.
So you have to actually prove you can do the work.
Right. And because the learning never stops, you'd be constantly updating your credentials. So your resume would be this living document that shows your latest skills.
That's a pretty cool idea, I have to say. It's a lot more accurate than a degree from 10 years ago.
For sure. But let's be real for a second. It's not going to be easy to make this happen. Universities are huge. They've been around forever. And change is hard.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to pay for all of this? Will students be willing to pay a subscription fee for something that doesn't have the same, status as a fancy degree?
Those are all good questions. And how do we make sure that this new system is fair? That everyone has access to it, not just people who can afford it?
Yeah, we can't leave anyone behind.
Exactly. There's a lot to figure out. But it does feel like something has to change, right? The old way of doing things just isn't working anymore.
It's like we're standing on a fault line and we can feel the tremors.
And the question is, are we going to wait for the earthquake? Or are we going to start building something new? Something that can withstand the shocks?
I like that analogy.
Okay.
So Mark Schaefer doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he's asking the right questions.
He wants us to imagine a better future for education.
One that's personalized and engaging and empowers people to keep learning their whole lives.
And maybe that's the most important thing of all. Learning shouldn't end when you graduate. It should be a lifelong journey. AI tools and skills learning is more important than ever. Click this next video to see how AI empowers creators without replacing them, and the many ways AI can serve as our creative co-pilot.